Response to the accusation that Christian leaders who meet to pray and share their views with President Trump are under fire from this secular group that says the meetings violate federal law?
Well, the nature of these meetings obviously do not violate federal law. You know, the accusations are that the White House has an evangelical advisory council or a faith advisory council, and the White House has had neither. And there was, to my knowledge, no intention to ever have either one of them. And so what has happened here is that during the campaign of Donald Trump, there was an evangelical advisory board. That board disbanded immediately after the campaign, and yet the White House has continued to reach out to evangelicals. So among the 700 or more evangelicals they've invited to listening sessions at the White House have been some of those original board members. There are only 40 to begin with. And so, I think the premise is flawed from the beginning. But of course, you have to consider the source. I mean, this is an organization that has for countless years, attacked devoutly religious people who are involved in the federal government. They certainly believe that religious constituents somehow ought to have a lesser voice in their government. And I immediately went to the website when I saw the news around this and noticed that they were within seconds raising money to fund this campaign to shut down the evangelical voice at the White House. And I think it's futile to begin with legally, and I think it's futile when it comes to their aim. Evangelicals are an enormous part of American life. There are tens and tens of millions of evangelicals. We have a very, very vibrant marketplace of ideas. We don't even always agree with one another on different things, and you just can't intimidate us into quieting down. It's just not going to work.
Why is it important for Christian leaders to be meeting with the president?
It seems so obvious to me that Christian leaders would meet with their elected officials, whether it's the president or anyone else. I mean, first of all, we're Americans like anyone else. Secondly, we as Christians, we don't believe in a theocracy. We're not asking the American government to, become a Christian nation. We do believe there's a Judeo-Christian foundation to our country, and I think, we represent part of that great heritage in our nation. But, we're like any other group, in the United States. We have opinions on issues, and our elected officials are elected to represent the will of the people. And so evangelicals ought to take their seat at the table. When they're invited to contribute their thoughts, their ideas, their perspectives, they ought to do it. And what we've seen in this administration especially, but what we've also seen in previous administrations, is that when evangelicals sit at the table, they make a difference. And there's a lot of talk in America about the difference evangelicals have made when it comes to religious liberty and to pro-life issues and these sorts of things. But there isn't enough talk about the difference that evangelicals have made in this administration when it comes to things like, the support of DACA, or comprehensive immigration reform, or criminal justice reform, or doubling the child tax credit because we believe it'll strengthen families, or paid family leave because we believe in strong families. Like, evangelicals are often actually the balancing force between the left and the right, between the Democrats and Republicans. And I think that plenty of people who want to sort of, reduce all evangelicals down to one particular policy or set of policies, they're deceiving themselves. And in the end, it's not good for some of the ideas that they personally represent, which are also biblical ideas that we believe in.
In the whole spectrum of groups that could meet with Trump, this is the group that really bothers the left, or bothers this particular group.
Well, when I saw a letter from the Americans United for Separation of Church and State, I mean, I just remembered back to my many years at Liberty University. I was there for over a dozen years, and we would get these letters on a very, very regular basis, and I always found it incredibly ironic that we have this organization that is a nonprofit organization that is obviously an incredibly partisan organization, calling out religious nonprofits who are allegedly partisan organizations. I mean, the irony is just totally unbelievable. But the fact is that the White House doesn't just meet with evangelicals. They meet with countless groups, countless constituents. They meet with people they agree with and they disagree with. It's just for whatever reason, I think certain people in the media and among activist groups have decided, that every time the White House meets with evangelicals, and they ought to get, a special level of criticism, or they act like the White House only meets with evangelicals. And it is true, that this administration has a special relationship with this constituency, and as did the Obama administration, had a special relationship with certain constituencies. That's the nature of electoral politics. In the United States, the will of the people decides who's in power, and the government represents everyone, and they solicit the opinions of everyone. And they do have people that they've known longer than others. But that's not to say that they aren't meeting with other people. It's kind of funny. From the very, very beginning, we've made it clear that there is no evangelical advisory council of the White House. I don't know how many times I've said that. How many times? I've said it again and again and again. And yet, certain people continue to refer to it. I was addressed in this letter as the spokesperson for the Evangelical Advisory Council. That was a title given to me by the press. It's not a title I actually have or have ever had. And so it's like you create this straw man, and then you try to take it down. And it's just factually untrue. And I think everybody just needs to recognize that this is an attempt to intimidate certain voices, and voices that will not be intimidated. I know evangelicals. They're not going to be scared into silence, whatever the threats are. And the other side of the coin is, in our advocacy for the First Amendment, we're also advocating for the rights of organizations like the Americans United for Separation of Church and State to oppose us on First Amendment terms. I am 100% for this. That's one of the reasons why we fought so fiercely, for the First Amendment, and continue to do it. We're not just fighting for ourselves; we're fighting for those who oppose us on political or religious grounds. So I kind of expected to get a thank you note from the Americans United for Separation of Church and State.